The Valdris Military Academy hung in space like a crystalline spiderweb, its geometric perfection offending several nearby asteroid fields through sheer architectural smugness. Suspended between the twin suns of Helix Prime, it served as the galaxy's most exclusive finishing school for future military elites, provided, naturally, that one belonged to the correct species. The admissions board possessed what they diplomatically called discerning standards and what everyone else recognized as systematic bigotry wrapped in academic jargon. The guy with the lightning-fast reflexes and paralytic venom? Obviously officer material. Quartzians whose crystalline bodies could withstand direct plasma bombardment? Welcome to the strategic command track. Etherians who existed as sentient gas and could phase through solid matter at will? Please, do take the advanced leadership courses. And then there were humans. The Academy's Xenobiology department had classified Homo sapiens as marginally sentient bipeds with delusions of competence, a designation that technically qualified them for admission, but carried roughly the same prestige as a participation ribbon at a funeral. Most faculty members viewed the handful of human exchange students as living examples of why democracy was a fundamentally flawed concept, which made the current situation all the more perplexing to the student body. It defies all logical explanation, Kreksoff hissed to his companions, his serpentine form coiled around a support beam in the dormitory common area. The Nogai's scales shimmered with iridescent patterns that indicated deep philosophical confusion. Why would the Academy waste resources on such obvious genetic defects? Thump resonated his agreement, the harmonic frequencies of his crystalline voice creating pleasant but deadly sonic vibrations in the surrounding air. Standing 9 feet tall and resembling a walking diamond formation, the Quartzian possessed all the subtlety of a geological event. Perhaps they serve as cautionary examples, living demonstrations of evolutionary failure. Wisp flickered between visible spectrums, their gaseous form pulsing with amusement. The entertainment value is considerable. Did you observe the human in tactical analysis yesterday? Professor Vexai asked about acceptable losses in orbital bombardment, and the creature appeared genuinely distressed by theoretical casualties. The 3 cadets shared what passed for laughter among their respective species, a symphony of sibilant hissing, crystalline chiming, and electromagnetic static that would have registered on several different types of scientific equipment. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was being monitored by the Academy's most sophisticated surveillance system, a human with exceptional hearing who happened to be cleaning the ventilation ducts directly overhead. Marcus Chen had discovered early in his tenure that being unremarkable carried certain operational advantages. His compact frame allowed access to maintenance areas where larger beings couldn't venture, and his species' apparent irrelevance meant most aliens forgot his existence the moment he left their peripheral vision. The acoustic properties of the Academy's air circulation system provided excellent intelligence-gathering opportunities for someone patient enough to listen. He'd arrived at Valdris through what his mother optimistically called bureaucratic serendipity, and what Marcus suspected was the universe's idea of cosmic humor. The son of a deep space freight handler didn't typically qualify for elite military training, even by human standards. But the paperwork had been processed, the transportation arranged, and Marcus found himself the lone human among 3,000 of the galaxy's most promising future commanders. The experience had been remarkably educational. The human contamination spreads, Kreksoff announced several days later, having spotted Marcus through the observation ports of the Academy's primary training facility. Observe its pathetic attempts at physical conditioning. The Valdris Combat Center represented the pinnacle of military training technology, a vast chamber capable of simulating any battlefield environment through a combination of holographic projection, gravitational manipulation, and carefully controlled reality distortion. Currently configured for elementary physical assessment, it challenged cadets with obstacles that most species completed within their first week of enrollment. Marcus had been attempting the course for 2 hours. Truly pitiful, Thump observed, his crystalline structure refracting the training facility's lighting into prismatic displays. Cannot maintain basic locomotive functions under standard atmospheric conditions. This assessment contained a kernel of accuracy, though not for the reasons they imagined. The Academy operated at 0.6 galactic standard gravity, which felt approximately like swimming through molasses to someone accustomed to Terra's crushing gravitational embrace. Marcus's movements appeared sluggish and uncoordinated compared to his naturally adapted classmates, his responses seeming delayed and his physical capabilities apparently limited. Wisp phased partially through the observation barrier to obtain a better view. Perhaps we should provide educational assistance for the advancement of interspecies understanding, naturally. The three cadets entered the training center with the casual confidence of apex predators approaching injured prey. Their initial intentions involved nothing more elaborate than routine humiliation, some verbal intimidation, perhaps minor physical coercion, just enough to reinforce the natural hierarchical order. "Human specimen," Kreksoff called out, his universal translator rendering the words in diplomatically neutral standard Galactic. "You appear to be experiencing systematic difficulties." Marcus paused his exercise routine and rotated to face them. He possessed the kind of aggressively average appearance that rendered him invisible in crowds. 5 feet 8 inches of unremarkable human engineering, brown hair maintained at regulation length, hazel eyes that suggested perpetual mild confusion, and facial features that a generous observer might describe as pleasantly forgettable. "Just working through the program," he replied, offering what appeared to be an apologetic smile. "Still calibrating to the local environmental parameters." "Environmental parameters are not your primary limitation," Thump declared, his voice creating small stress fractures in nearby equipment. "You are simply evolutionarily inadequate." Word of the developing entertainment had spread through the Academy's communication networks with quantum efficiency. Cadets from dozens of species pressed against observation windows, eager to witness what promised to be a brief but amusing spectacle. Several enterprising Plutonians had established betting pools, with odds heavily favoring the aliens at approximately 1,500 to 1. "Look, I really don't want any complications," Marcus said, raising his hands in what every galactic species recognized as a submissive gesture. "Maybe I should just return to my assigned duties." Kreksoff's hood flared with predatory satisfaction. "I think not, human. You see, this academy maintains certain traditions. We call it hierarchical clarification. It ensures that natural order remains properly established. Survival of the superior," Wisp added, their gaseous form brightening with anticipation. "Surely even your primitive species comprehends basic evolutionary principles." The crowd in the observation areas had swollen considerably, and someone had activated the Academy's internal broadcast system. Students throughout the facility tuned in to witness what was universally expected to be a thoroughly one-sided educational demonstration. Commander Draktal materialized in the primary observation deck, his forearms crossed in an expression of professional resignation. A veteran of the Corvanian border wars, he'd lost his original left manipulator appendages to enemy fire and replaced them with military-grade cybernetic prosthetics that moved with predatory precision. His species possessed natural telepathic abilities that made him exceptionally qualified to monitor combat training exercises. "Initiate when prepared," he announced through the facility's audio system, his tone suggesting he'd rather be reviewing supply requisitions. The Academy's safety protocols activated automatically, establishing containment fields and biometric monitoring systems. Institutional regulations required all educational conflicts to be properly documented, which translated to ensure the insurance lawyers have adequate evidence for liability assessments. Kreksoff struck with typical Nogai efficiency. His species had evolved as ambush hunters, capable of moving with supernatural speed and delivering paralytic venom through retractable fangs. He crossed the training floor in a blur of serpentine motion, aiming for what should have been a simple incapacitation strike. Marcus stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding the bite that would have rendered him unconscious within seconds. He appeared to lose his footing entirely, falling in what looked like poly-coordinated panic as Kreksoff's follow-up attack passed harmlessly through empty air. The assembled crowd erupted in appreciative laughter. Even the instructors seemed entertained by the human's apparent clumsiness. Thump advanced with characteristic Quartzian subtlety, which is to say he charged forward like a living avalanche. His crystalline physiology had developed on a high-pressure world where overwhelming force represented the solution to most interpersonal disagreements. He thundered across the training floor with seismic impact, massive fists raised to deliver what should have been a definitive conclusion. Marcus rolled toward the Quartzian rather than away, such an obviously suicidal maneuver that several spectators actually gasped in horror. Thump's momentum carried him forward, his strike connecting with the reinforced training floor in an impact that registered on seismic sensors throughout the academy. The human had somehow slipped beneath the Quartzian's guard. Wisp attacked from an impossible angle, their gaseous form capable of striking from any direction without conventional physical limitations. Concentrated plasma energy arced toward Marcus's previous position, sufficient voltage to disrupt most organic nervous systems permanently. But Marcus had already moved, positioning himself near one of the training center's atmospheric processes. When Wisp's energy discharge struck the metallic surface, feedback cascades rippled through their molecular structure, causing dangerous destabilization throughout their gaseous matrix. Fortunate coincidence, someone in the crowd muttered. Commander Draktal leaned forward, his cybernetic arms whirring as they adjusted sensory focus. His telepathic abilities were detecting something inconsistent with the visual evidence, but the pattern remained frustratingly elusive. The 3 alien cadets regrouped with renewed determination, circling their apparently helpless target with coordinated precision. Marcus continued his seemingly random evasion pattern, colliding with walls and obstacles with what appeared to be practiced incompetence. Sufficient games. Krexov hissed. Coordinated assault pattern. Terminate this embarrassment. They attacked in perfect synchronization. Krexov from the right with blinding velocity, Thump from directly ahead with unstoppable momentum, and Wisp from above with precisely targeted energy bursts. It represented a flawlessly executed tactical maneuver that should have resulted in the human's immediate incapacitation. Instead, Marcus stopped stumbling. The transformation was so subtle that most observers missed it entirely. One moment he embodied the same awkward, frightened primitive they'd been observing for months. The next, he had become something fundamentally different. Marcus stepped into Thump's charge instead of away from it, his smaller frame moving with sudden, economical precision. He intercepted the Quartzian's massive wrist at exactly the optimal angle and redirected the creature's own kinetic energy. Basic physics handled the remainder. 9 feet of crystalline alien went sailing through the air to impact the far wall, with a sound like a building demolition. Krexov's fangs, aimed at where Marcus's neck had been, instead found vacuum. The human had dropped low and pivoted, his elbow finding the precise neural junction where the Nogai's spine connected to his hood assembly. The crack was audible throughout the training center, and Krexov collapsed immediately, his serpentine form twitching with synaptic misfires. Wisp's plasma discharge struck the wall behind Marcus's former location. The human was now positioned directly beneath the energy being, having somehow calculated the exact timing necessary to avoid the attack while maneuvering into Wisp's theoretical blind spot. Marcus reached up and grasped one of the facility's grounding conductors. When Wisp's next electrical attack arrived, it discovered an unexpected pathway to the Academy's power grid through the human's nervous system. Most galactic species would have died instantly from such exposure. Marcus grimaced but maintained his grip, channeling the energy safely around his vital organs and directly into the facility's electrical infrastructure. The feedback overloaded Wisp's molecular cohesion, and they collapsed into emergency preservation mode, effectively unconscious. The training center fell absolutely silent. Marcus straightened slowly, brushing debris from his uniform. He surveyed his unconscious opponents with what might have been mild regret, then addressed the observation deck. "Medical assistance required in the training center," he called out, his voice carrying clearly through the sudden quiet. 3 cadets down. Injuries appear serious but probably not fatal. Commander Draktal stared at the scene below, his cybernetic systems clicking as they processed sensor data. The readings defied rational explanation. According to the facility's monitoring equipment, the human had barely exerted himself. His cardiovascular activity remained within normal parameters, his respiratory function showed no elevation, and his biometric signatures suggested someone engaged in light calisthenics rather than mortal combat. "Computer," Draktal said quietly, "replay the engagement. Maximum resolution, all sensor arrays." The holographic display reconstructed the fight from multiple perspectives, analyzing each moment with frame-by-frame precision. What had appeared to be stumbling and panic resolved into something else entirely: calculated movement, perfect timing, and an almost supernatural ability to predict his opponent's tactical decisions. "Computer, analyze the human's combat performance. Cross-reference with Academy databases." Analysis complete. The artificial intelligence responded in its insufferably calm tone. Combat performance consistent with advanced tactical training. Estimated skill level, Expert Plus. Note: subject appears to be operating under significant environmental limitations. Explain limitations. Gravitational differential detected. Subject's homeworld operates at approximately 3 times current facility gravity. Atmospheric analysis suggests adaptation to hostile environment by galactic standards. Recommended classification, Deathworld native. Commander Draktal felt something cold and unpleasant settle in his primary stomach. Deathworld species were exceptionally rare in civilized space, evolutionary products of planets so hostile that survival required extraordinary adaptation. They were generally considered unsuitable for polite society. Emergency medical teams flooded the training center, attending to the 3 alien cadets with practice deficiency. Thump had suffered what humans would classify as a severe concussion, though Quartzian physiology made cranial trauma somewhat less catastrophic than it would be for softer species. Krexotha's neurocolumn required immediate surgical intervention, and his paralytic glands would need several weeks to regenerate. Wisp was stable but required extensive molecular reconstruction. All 3 would eventually recover, which represented a better outcome than most beings achieved when confronting Deathworld predators. Marcus waited patiently as medical teams worked, answering questions with his characteristic polite, apologetic demeanor. Yes, he regretted the necessity of violence. No, he hadn't intended for the situation to escalate. Yes, he understood there would be administrative consequences. Cadet Chen, Commander Draktal called from the observation deck. Report for immediate debriefing. As Marcus departed the training center, whispered conversations erupted throughout the facility. Information spread through the Academy's networks with superluminal velocity. Within hours, every cadet, instructor, and administrative official understood the fundamental facts. The small, unremarkable human had systematically dismantled 3 of the Academy's most promising students without apparent effort. Research requests overwhelmed the Academy's databases as various species began investigating this terror that had produced such an unexpected specimen. What they discovered was profoundly disturbing. Terra had been classified as a Class 15 Deathworld, a planet where evolution had apparently conducted experiments in creative lethality. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere contained multiple toxic compounds. Weather patterns included phenomena called hurricanes, tornadoes, and tsunamis, and the native predators seemed designed by particularly vindictive gods. Humans were the apex predators. They had evolved under conditions that would eliminate most galactic species within minutes. Their dense skeletal structure and efficient musculature represented adaptations to crushing gravity. Their aggressive immune systems and redundant organ configurations were evolutionary responses to constant environmental threats. Their pattern recognition and tactical analysis capabilities had developed from millions of years of being hunted by creatures specifically evolved to kill them. And somehow, they had achieved interstellar travel. Over the following weeks, Academy policies underwent what administrators termed routine adjustments, but what everyone recognized as comprehensive damage control. Human exchange students were quietly transferred to advanced combat programs. Nutritional requirements were modified to accommodate their apparently volcanic metabolisms. Gravity generators in human quarters were increased to match their homeworld specifications. Most significantly, the tradition of hierarchical clarification was permanently discontinued. Marcus resumed his maintenance duties with the same quiet competence he'd always demonstrated, servicing environmental systems and performing routine repairs as though nothing had changed. He continued struggling with the training simulators, though instructors now understood this was due to environmental incompatibility rather than incompetence. He still seemed apologetic for occupying space, still offered nervous smiles when addressed by superior officers. The only noticeable difference was that conversations ceased when he entered rooms, and corridors mysteriously emptied when he passed through them. 8 months later, Marcus graduated with the Academy's highest military honors, though he insisted this was due to grade inflation rather than exceptional performance. He received a commission as lieutenant in the Galactic Defense Force and assignment to a deep space reconnaissance vessel, safely distant from populated systems where his presence might cause social disruption. His final evaluation, filed by Commander Draktul and classified at the highest security levels, contained a single recommendation that would influence military recruitment policies for centuries: immediately review human integration protocols. Species demonstrates exceptional combat potential when appropriately motivated. Recommend extreme caution in future interactions. The galaxy was slowly learning that a significant difference existed between being civilized and being harmless. And somewhere in the depths of space, on a small blue planet where everything continuously attempted to kill everything else, billions of humans continued their daily existence, completely unaware that they had just been reclassified as one of the universe's most dangerous species. The Academy's admissions board, naturally, had possessed this information all along. They simply hadn't considered it relevant enough to mention in the orientation materials. After all, where would be the entertainment value in that?